We're back in Rome, taking on an old favourite.
But how does this latest edition from Fantasia Games compare? Welcome to Box Meeples, I'm Libby, this is Julian, and today we are talking about Colosseum, an old favourite. I mean, this one's had a few different versions, so we have played the Days of Wonder version. There's also another TMG version that we haven't played, and now there's a new version coming to crowdfunding from Fantasia Games, and it looks a little bit like that.
So Colosseum is a game I remember when I first started playing more complicated board games with a friend of ours, and he introduced me to this and he said, don't worry, it's not too complicated, you'll be able to get it quite quickly. And he is a historian. He's actually a doctor of history, so he knows his history. And I remember sitting down and playing it, and gladiators are kind of cool. The Colosseum, that's kind of cool, but that's really where my extent of Roman history went. But in this, you are putting on events in your Colosseum, and you've got to make sure you have the right people, the right equipment, the right animals to put on the best spectacle you have. And you get these people by bidding in a market. So there's a combination of bidding, and then you have the fun bit where you have to kind of haggle with fellow players around the table.
And you also have that fun of who's coming to watch your show. Will there be an emperor coming in the crowd? You know, maybe they'll be doing the thumbs up, thumbs down thing. Who knows? But what sort of, Roman royalty will be visiting? And then are they going to gain you some points as well?
And it's really fun, this kind of risky nature of it. You have to bid for the different shows you're able to put on, then be able to at least do some of them. But it's okay if you don't do all of it.
Yeah, I love how flexible it is in terms of, you might be a lion short. Maybe there's a cage short. Maybe the lion escaped from the cage and that's why you're short. But you can still put the show on. You just won't get the same reward. So you could almost put almost anything on if you've been careful about what you've chosen. But it's just how well you managed to do it. And this has a lot of nostalgia for us, this game. First time meeting some of your friends, and this is the game that we played, and we played it quite a few times. And it's, it's got those lovely memories from sort of early on in our relationship, kind of, figuring out new games together. And
I do love those memories that we had where we would always explain our spectacles, much like we do with so many other games where we're saying we are trying to do this big event, but can't help but notice one of the lions ate a gladiator and is not here. There's no cages, so they're just roaming free. You probably don't want to watch this. There's a chance you might die. But there's a cool scoring mechanism in this, though, because over the course of the game, you're going to put on multiple of these shows, and then you can score for the best one. So as long as you keep getting better over it, your score is going to increase, but maybe the third performance you put on, you put all your effort into making that one really sing, could be the one that wins you the game.
But you do have that natural progression each time, getting better and better, getting more and more. I mean, you do lose something at the end of each round that you've performed, so you have to kind of gain things back to progress. But you are always progressing if you've dealt with your money well.
Now, this latest version from Fantasia Games has got an eye towards the past, yet an eye towards the future. It's taken that classic game and faithfully recreated it, but in a kind of through a nostalgic lens, where it's removed the bits that were a bit annoying in that version and just improved on them, improved the kind of quality of life experience, and done a complete overhaul of the aesthetic. So I think it's about time that we actually venture into the Colosseum and play this latest version from Fantasia Games. So, Colosseum, the Grand Spectacle. Where are you on the whole? Yeah, this is great. It's got that nostalgia, but made better for us. Now, this is actually only the second version we played. We obviously played a lot of the original Days of Wonder one, but didn't dabble in the second one, partly because this originally didn't play for 2 people.
No, it's a 3 players up. So then, I mean, not the Days of Wonder version was very difficult to get hold of.
Yes. So,
but we weren't particularly trying to add games to our collection that we didn't think we'd get to play that often, and we couldn't play the 2 of us. So it being 3+ was a bit of a barrier. This new option.
It's 2-player version, isn't it?
I
must confess, it looked as nice as this one does. So the second edition that came out had art that didn't appeal to me whatsoever.
Yes.
If that didn't exist and this came then, I would have been very hard to resist it, because
I think that
fantastic.
was the barrier that meant that we haven't had it in our collection up till now. We've only played our friends' versions of it because that one was hard to get hold of, and then the 3-player, and then the art didn't appeal, and we can be quite fussy when it comes to art and theme and stuff. So it was that sort of trifactor that meant that we don't own it. But I think with this,
if we were to get one, it would be this one.
It would be this one. And I mean, let's start with that art comparison, shall we? I feel like this really gives you that gladiator film kind of vibe. It gives the drama that I think that the other one has slightly lacked, particularly I think on the cards which have the different types of events. You know, are you doing one where the Colosseum is flooded full of water and you've got all the ships out and all these different animals and stuff, and that artwork on sort of one side is slightly more muted, and then as you've completed it you've got this bright vibrant thing. And I think the way that it's drawn, that sort of styling, and the way you've got one big Colosseum in the centre of the board really draws you into feeling this kind of great epic vibe.
I think that's the biggest change for me, the board itself. I mean, in the Days of Wonder version, you had your own kind of mini Colosseum that would sit in front of you on the board, and in the middle of it was just kind of, this is where stuff goes, where you're doing the auction.
So it's a little bit like, you know, a third way into the film of Gladiator, and you're just going around the little training rings, and no one really knows who you are as a gladiator. And now this version's like at the end of the end of the game, when you're actually in the Colosseum.
I love that you see this Colosseum in front of you. And in the original one, you expanded your Colosseum. In this one, you're buying gates into the Colosseum.
Entry ticket areas, yes.
So the larger the spectacle you're going to put on, the more gates you have to funnel in your massive amounts of crowds. And thematically, it all makes much more sense, with the senators literally going around the Colosseum, picking which gates and which events they're going to watch, rather than them travelling around Rome, going to small kind of teeny tiny little Colosseum. That made less sense. And this, you do feel like you're competing. You know, you take it in turns to put on your spectacle, and this takes place in the same Colosseum. So it does feel like a case of one-upmanship, where your event was kind of the warm-up. Mine's the big deal. Mine's got lions and elephants in it. And it's strange that such a aesthetic change can twist and just elevate that epic nature of it all.
Because mechanically it's actually quite similar. You know, there's not a lot of change, but just those tweaks changes the whole vibe of it, the feel of it, the mood on the table.
All of the changes they made here make it more streamlined. The fact you have less rounds in this, the original, a little bit bigger player counts, feels like it outstays its welcome a little bit. And
it outstays its welcome because you can only do one thing on your turn, and in this version you can do more things, so you can really get that engine moving. Obviously money's a situational problem. Every single round you need to make sure that you've got enough to buy the option of things that you want. Now you might want to, probably you're going to be wanting to get some more shows, but there's options that can adapt the dice, there's options to add more gates, and all of those kind of things that you're going to need to be thinking about. So particularly when you're trying to level up a show, you're going to need to have another gate to be eligible to do that show, but then you also want to buy the show, and previously you couldn't do that.
No, you'd have to wait 2 turns to get both of those things.
And it really dragged out the rounds with you knowing that you've pretty much got all the stuff to do this epic show, but you just have to wait to be able to buy what's required to put it on. It didn't really make a lot of sense, and this has really streamlined that and meant that as long as you're careful with your money and you leave enough for the bidding section, which you're going to need at least 8 coin to kind of take part in that whole bidding to get more stuff. Of course, if you've got everything that you need already, maybe you don't need to think about that, but most rounds you're going to be wanting to add a little bit more to your little sort of lineup of equipment and gladiators and lions and elephants and scenery and lighting, torches, there's ponies, there's all sorts of things.
But the other kind of tweak they've done with the rules is to do with the dice. Now, obviously, before you put on your event, you roll, in this version, 2 dice. In the original one, you had to buy that right to use that second dice, which meant that the senators didn't move us around as much. In this new version, everyone's got a chance of really scooting them around, which makes it much, much more tactical. Yeah,
because you can kick someone out of someone else's someone else's gates. You can just sort of hop them along a little way along the line, and obviously that probably is going to bring them close to you. It may not even bring them into your gates, but at least you know they won't be scoring next time.
Just that ability to move them more.
Yes. Everything's sort of ramped up, I think.
It makes it more intense. It takes what was a longer game, just distills it down and just takes all the good bits just in a quicker play experience. Now, it is worth mentioning while we're talking about dice, what we are playing with here is a prototype, and some of the things will change.
Yes.
But that being said, this looks wonderful.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And what looks really wonderful is, so if you have 4 or more and you have the most of any of the particular elements that you might put on for your show, so easiest to do is probably the gladiators, because there's more of them in the bag in the game than anything else. But with every other element there is a little token you can have if you have the most. Little star performer that's going to give you points every single round for your show, because you've just done it so well in that particular area.
As long as they're involved in it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. These little like meeples. Gladder meeple. You get those to sort of show that you're the star performer in that area. Of course, people can sort of vie for taking that. They can try to persuade you to do an exchange, and then in that they might be able to take it. It might be a reason why someone doesn't want to trade with you. But those, let's call them gladiator meeples because it sounds fun. They are really lovely. They're a nice touch that sort of elevates the whole of the look of it, along with your gates and your column that you use for the bidding and everything. It just adds these extra special elements. I mean, the coins are nice. I know that there are metal coins in some of the versions as well, which obviously we would always choose to have
the best one. But yeah, it's a luxurious. We've seen these with many other companies as well, taking an old favourite and giving it not just a fresh lick of paint, but a deluxe treatment that some of these older games really deserve, making them much more appealing to an audience that are new to it, but also celebrating an old game for the real hardcore fans and getting it to the kind of level that we expect from a kind of top tier premium product.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that the Days of Wonder version of Colosseum, I mean, it's not a young thing, and it was groundbreaking
back
at that
day,
time, because those meeples, the emperor and everything, he had that lovely sort of laurel crown on there. They really made an effort with a lot of the different elements there, much more than you would have seen frequently at the time. So it's nice that they've kind of kept homage to that sort of styling of those in this, but again, they elevated that little bit more again. And once again, we must say that these ones again are the prototype versions and not the finished version.
It looks pretty good.
But either of these are lovely, but we do know there are some tweaks and changes to them, colours and things like that in the finished version.
And of course, if you are a fan of those games, this new version adds so much more. There's expansions coming to it that will work with this new version and the different play modes. This is a game, I think, that works with a larger player count because you are doing that auction, you are doing that bidding and that exchange. I'm interested to see how it does translate for that solo mode and particularly for us to be able to play it at 2 players.
Yes, yeah.
It's just things like that are going to expand, bring it to a bigger audience. But this is such a great game that you can play at 5-player. There's not enough games that do that as quickly and as involving as this one does. Play it with the right group of people, because there is a danger that someone could get really bogged down and analysing all of but that could get me that, and that would just derail the fun of it. Just be loose and gamble on what you think could work. Maybe set a time if you're worried that people are going to be a bit critical. A sand timer would be very in keeping with
this is just for choosing your shows. I think essentially that's the only bit that kind of delays things, trying to make sure that you've picked the right one for the stuff that you've got. But I think if you work as a group together you can lay them out on the board so everyone can see them. That will help that enormously.
I can just see with this new version having so many people around and just having that 5-player experience where everyone's putting on their show, they're talking through what they want. You've got that banter about that bidding, and it's going to be a raucous night of toga wearing.
And were the lights on or were they off in your show? Who knows?
Now, of course, if this new version of Colosseum is something you're interested in, there is links down below to all of the campaign pages, whatever state that is when you're watching this. You might be able to get it on BackerKit. So if you have missed out on it, don't worry, there'll still be opportunities for you to get this, and eventually, of course, it will be coming to retail. You'll be able to get it from your friendly local game store as well.
Yes, exactly. And for us, I think it's hands down the best version of this game that you can get. So if you are wondering how they compare, I hope that this has helped you out a little bit. But we are Box Meeples. We post videos on board games at least twice a week. So if you aren't subscribed to us already, we would really love if you would do that.
And as always, thank you so much for watching.
Bye.